Those French fries made me feel guilty. And truly, the pizza or the French fries are literally just a mirror being held up to us. If I feel guilty after I ate French fries, it's because I was already feeling guilty before. I just didn't know what my feeling was. We call it cognitive dissonance. I did have an eating disorder, and I was in recovery by the time I became a dietitian, but I sort of made it my mission to bring that sort of threshold of I can only get help if I have this very severe problem. But what I realized when I got started is, oh my gosh, so many people don't even know it's okay to enjoy your food. It should be against the law to say this is the best diet without saying this is the best diet for me. Because that's right. I'm so happy you found a way that works for you. I'm not here to argue with you about it at all. But don't make it sound like this is what everybody should be doing. You haven't met everybody yet. How can you possibly know? If everybody can have a different personality, everybody can have a different way of eating. And the idea that there's this right way, I've actually spent 25 years talking to people, and there are literally no two people who need the exact same things. The way you eat should not be the thing that makes you feel like you're better than everybody else. Like, why are you feeling so bad about yourself? If I let myself be free with food, I would just eat whatever. And I think, really? Like, you would eat pennies and you would eat paper clips? Like, I don't think you would eat everything all the time. It's not all one or all the other. So that's where I feel like people misinterpret freedom as eating all those lesser nutritious foods all the time. And it's not. Freedom means that you don't blame yourself for being human. Don't believe everything you think. That was mind-blowing. Like, what? Like, my thoughts aren't real. They're just a way of thinking.
Many of us silently struggle with our relationship with food, our bodies, and the message we carry since childhood. My guest today has spent her career giving people permission to talk about these struggles. Jessica Setnick, an eating disorder specialist, author, speaker, advocate. She's trained thousands of health professionals worldwide. She's written groundbreaking books and articles on it. And now she dedicates her work to consulting, teaching, and creating healing spaces for both professionals and everyday people like you. Jessica, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I loved what you said about giving people permission to talk about their eating, because I feel like that is the main issue, is that we feel so ashamed about our eating, and there's really no reason. As someone who's heard all the weird stuff that people do with their food, my job is not to judge. And I know people sometimes think of dietitians as the food police, but it's the exact opposite. We know that we don't know the whole story of anyone's life, so we don't judge anything. And I just really related. I wrote down those words, giving people permission to talk about their eating, because I really related to those words. So thank you. And I feel like that's your vibe too, is giving people permission to talk about things.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's actually for me, it's more like creating awareness. Like, hey, I can talk. I can feel safe. We can have these conversations.
Absolutely.
That's the point.
And I think by doing it, you give other people permission. I know that as a speaker in the beginning, I thought I had to be this very perfect polished speaker, and that's what people wanted. But I realized the more I let myself sort of be real and authentic, actually people like that better. People really prefer seeing that humanness and that imperfection. And I know I always appreciate it in someone else, that someone else is running late, or that someone else mixed up the days of the meeting or something like that. It always makes me feel better when I have those little stumbles, knowing that it's just part of life instead of something that's specifically wrong with me.
Yes, I think somehow along the way, we have lost touch with our own selves as of what it actually means to be human, to also allow ourselves to make those mistakes, that are, because everything it has to be, society somehow has cultured us to, like, it's got to be this way in this setting. We forget that we're not machines. We actually, human beings with emotions, and, that we need to regulate in the process of everything.
And then what I describe it is that emotions are on a roller coaster all the time, like whatever the emotions are, you have lots of them, hundreds of them during a day. Sometimes they're really dramatic. If it's really a scary roller coaster, that's when you talk to someone professional and get help. But even though a well-balanced or well-medicated person still has a roller coaster of feelings all day long, and that's normal. The problem is when your food gets on the roller coaster. And that's what we're really trying to separate, is what is really about feelings and what is about food. Because like you said, in our culture, we have this idea that things are supposed to be a certain way, and food fits right into that trap of needing to be a certain way. And we blame ourselves when it's not that way. And we regret things that we do, or we feel like we failed. And fascinating to me that we wake up every day and think all of my eating is my choice. And if I mess anything up, it's my fault. When really we have no control over so many aspects of our food. Which foods are at the grocery store for you even to buy? How close a grocery store even is to your house? Whether you can afford certain foods, whether you can afford the gas to get to the grocery store. There's so many environmental and societal aspects of our eating. And then we haven't even mentioned culturally what your culture thinks of as food versus a non-food item, and what you learned from the people who raised you, from your heritage, from your personal experiences. So it's so ironic that we wake up every day and if something goes wrong with our eating, we think, oh, it's so embarrassing. It's me. I screwed up. When really we're not giving credit to that our conscious choices are like a tiny piece of all of that food. I don't know if food noise is the right word, but food influences.
Right. And everything else that surrounds us. Also, I think a word that comes to mind is the routines that we have. Routines also have a lot to do with it. What's accessible, and then again, we're trying just to like keep that hunger. And so we just grab for whatever, because again, we're supposed to eat at this time and we're, all these things, that we've been taught seems to me that since childhood,
Oh, yeah. And that's actually what my whole mission is. It's called Healing Your Inner Eater. And it's teaching people to look back, not just at your own childhood, but at the people who actually raised you, whether those were your parents or caregivers or grandparents or foster parents, or, not just limited to two people, like all of the people that were really influential in your life growing up, and how all of their experiences impacted your eating. Because the way they raised us to eat reflects the issues that they had. And there's no one alive who wasn't raised by someone who either has been in the Great Depression, a refugee situation, World War II rationing, some reason that they were not able to get enough to eat. And so we all across the board, no matter what your history is, almost everyone I work with remembers hearing you have to eat everything on your plate because there's children starving in blank. It's a different country for every person, but the idea was universally passed on to us because the people who raised us had been in a situation where that was all they were going to get. And so they weren't trying to screw us up about food. They were trying to teach us a lesson of love, but it wasn't appropriate for the environment a lot of times that we were in. And so we are carrying those messages that were really maybe very important 40 or 80 or 100 years ago, but are no longer functional in our lives. But we feel guilty if we don't do it because it feels like betraying the people who raised us. So it gets very complicated.
And one of the things that comes to mind also is the fact how, like my mom used to tell me, how many children are starving in Africa, whatever, and you're not. But the whole idea of not being able to listen to your body, what if, that's something that struck me. What if, when your child actually tells you, like, mommy, I'm really not hungry. Like, I don't feel like eating. And what does that mean, Well, I don't care if you're not hungry, you better eat or something, So we have learned not to listen to our body.
And then we're later when they don't have those skills. And I completely agree with you. It's the idea that we know better. You can't be hungry now. You just ate. Or you have to eat something now because it's time to eat. And what we're doing is we are overruling someone's cues, internal cues. But not only that, we're overruling their body autonomy. And I believe that what goes in your body should be your own choice. And I'm referring to many different things. And when we teach someone, don't listen to your own boundaries and the boss of you, I feel like we are taking that body autonomy away. And the good news is that the same kids that say, no, mommy, I'm not eating that because I'm not hungry or I don't like it, are the same kids that will say, no, I won't do drugs. No, I won't have unprotected sex with you. Like, it's really a good skill to be able to say, this violates my boundaries. And yet when it comes to food, we insist that children do it our way instead of their own way. And it can cause all kinds of problems later.
I have to admit, I am not an expert on nutrition. I know very little about nutrition, enough through nursing school, and we took some nutrition classes, put it that way. But it's amazing how what you have mentioned here, it occurs to me somehow the relationship with food. I always heard about that. There's a relationship, and I wonder what it exactly means. What does that mean?
To me, the relationship with food means the beliefs and the thoughts and the feelings that you have about food, because food is an inanimate object, right? So it's not a relationship in the sense that it's mutual. Like with another person, you can have a mutual relationship. With a pet, you can have a mutual relationship. With food, it's a one-way relationship. And yet we believe that pizza made me feel bad. Those French fries made me feel guilty. And truly, the pizza or the French fries are literally just a mirror being held up to us. If I feel guilty after I ate French fries, it's because I was already feeling guilty before. I just didn't know what my feeling was. We call it cognitive dissonance in the psychobabble world, right? It's like I don't feel good about something and I want something to blame. And when I blame French fries, now I can tell myself, well, if I don't eat French fries again, then I don't have to feel that bad feeling again. But the truth is, a person who's content and happy and living their best life doesn't eat that are going to make them feel bad. So if I chose something that I think is not good for me, it's because there's some part of me that doesn't feel good already. And so it's sort of a mask for our feelings. But to me, the relationship with food is what we believe about food, because you might eat French fries and say, that was delicious. I was craving French fries. I ate French fries. I'm really happy now. So for someone else to say, I feel really guilty, or I feel really angry, or I feel really depressed now, it can't be the French fries, because there is not a mutual relationship here. It is a one-way relationship. And that's what, to me, a relationship with food is it's what you bring, what values you bring to food, because food is just molecules. Molecules can't make you feel any certain way. It's like saying that, like, this couch makes me feel a certain way. No, it just exists, but it's my beliefs and my thoughts and my feelings about this couch that comprise my relationship with.
Now, let me ask you that. Is it because food is also seen in a cultural, if we go around the world and we think about what cultures do have in common, food is one of those things that, you'll find it, everybody has to eat, right? And so I always thought about that relationship with food, about what kind of sentiment does evoke, like for me, when I see certain meals, some of them, remind me of, again, when my mom used to cook, when we sat at the table, or like, let's say Thanksgiving dinner, whatever, all this. So evokes certain sentiments at the time. And so I think of that very often. Or like, I always imagine those families of people who like own restaurants, and that's actually like a business, and they're constantly, food is like their main, I don't know, it's a very important part of their life, right? But then I also wonder, do you ever heard about people worrying about food, like food worry? Is that a thing?
Of course. I think it's very common, because when you're saying, culturally, food is such a big part of our lives, it can be a supportive part of our lives, and it can be a destructive part of our lives. I mean, that's very much flexible. And I'm thinking you have these warm feels of your mom maybe cooking in the kitchen, but I always think about Chandler from Friends, how he hates Thanksgiving or Thanksgiving food, because that's when his parents told him they were getting a divorce. And so he hates Thanksgiving food now, right? So that relationship can be a positive one or it could be a negative one. And it all depends on the other people around you. I mean, some people might say, I love chocolate chip cookies. They make me feel so good. Someone else might say, oh, you know what? I once snuck a chocolate chip cookie and I got grounded for a week. I don't like chocolate chip cookies. They make me feel like I'm doing something wrong, So it's completely individual. Even within a culture, even within a family, your relationship with food is still your own and very specific. And so it's not okay for us to assume everyone thinks XYZ food is good or everyone thinks XYZ food is bad. That's why, as I mentioned with, dietitians, people think we just like deliver all this information about food. It's the opposite. We are really listening to hear what is already there for people about food. And then we try to sift through it and figure out what information we have that can maybe help someone feel not as guilty or not as worried about food. And I think that there is a lot of marketing that is based on fear, right? Eat this food because this other food is no good for you. And some of that is just literally like corporate America trying to make one product seem better than another. No different than one dishwashing liquid trying to say another dishwashing liquid is no good. But with food, because it's something that we need, it becomes so so personal and so emotional. And when we say things like, oh, don't eat that, that's bad for you, kids really don't have the discernment to understand that that's all relative. They really see it like this laundry detergent is good and this laundry detergent is bad because they don't have a frame of reference. It's the same thing. If you tell kids eating corn chips is bad and then you're eating corn chips, they're going to be, Mom, don't eat those. Those are bad for you, because it's a very direct correlation for them. So it's really incredibly individual. But if we don't look at our own individual relationship with food and choose whether to keep it or not keep it, the default is we're going to pass it on to our kids exactly the way it was passed on to us.
Well, and Jessica, I want to know what led you to this work? I mean, is there like a personal journey? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh my gosh, yes. Part of it is a personal journey that led me to it. And then being in this work has led me through another personal journey of even more, right? Being in the field. But the original beginning of it was that I was studying anthropology in college and I didn't know what I would do with my life. And I took a nutrition class as an elective. And I thought, this is so interesting and it can be a career, right? And like anthropology in my mind was very unclear what kind of career you would have. And if you don't know what anthropology is, I don't blame you. I didn't know what it was either, but it's basically the study of people. So there's cultural anthropology where you study different cultures. There's medical anthropology where you study the development of medicine, right? That kind of thing. And then there's nutritional anthropology where you study the cultures and the way that we develop, like I said, to decide what is food. Is it grasshopper food or is it grasshopper nut food, right? That's different in different cultures. So that kind of thing. And so when I got into nutrition school where I thought, okay, this is going to be my career, I was really surprised that the things that I found so interesting, like how does food get to you? Why do you make the choices you make? How do you feel after you eat? All that stuff that I thought was sort of very fascinating about anthropology. The only area that people were really talking about it in nutrition was in the eating disorders area. It's really true about everyone, but really like from school standpoint, you only talked about the psychology of eating if you were talking about eating disorders. And so that's the path that I was most drawn to. Meanwhile, I had experienced my own eating disorder, but like many people, I thought it's not really an eating disorder. Like it's not severe enough. And now there's actually a book called Sick Enough, all about eating disorders, which sort of recognizes that we think in our minds of eating disorders as this very specific kind of problem. And anything less than that doesn't count. Like if I wasn't really sick, if I didn't have to go to the hospital, then I didn't really have an eating disorder like that. And I did have an eating disorder. And so I was in recovery by the time I became a dietitian, but I sort of made it my mission to bring that sort of threshold of I can only get help if I have this very severe problem way down. And this is going to sound like a tangent, but I promise it's not. On my path, at some point, I decided I wanted to really speak about this. And this was back in maybe the early 2000s when the way that the speaker coach worked that I worked with, you sent all your like VHS tapes and your audio tapes and all of your CDs of your talks and everything. You put it in a FedEx pack, sent it to her, and then she listens to your whole speaking repertoire and then gives you like a 3-hour report on the phone of like what she thinks you should do for your speaking career. And after listening to everything I had to say for a week, she said to me in our meeting, you really need to take the words eating disorder out of your presentation titles. And I felt like she stabbed me in the heart. Like, why are you like taking away my identity? What are you talking about? And she said, I listen to everything you have to say. And when people hear the words eating disorder, they check out. They think that doesn't apply to me or I don't work with that kind of patients. But she said, I listened to everything you said and it all applies to everyone who eats. And that's when I really shifted my focus. I still talk about the same stuff, but I try to talk about eating behaviors, problem eating behaviors, disruptive eating behaviors. I try to talk about productive eating behaviors versus disruptive eating behaviors so that nobody checks out and says, oh, I'm not that sick. I don't have that many problems. Let's help people before it gets to be that severe of a problem. That's really my goal.
My thoughts on what you just said is, why don't we even begin to understand what is normal, right? Because we tend to think, oh, that doesn't apply to me, but how do we even know that doesn't apply to us if we really don't know what's really appropriate because we just go on in life and we just kind of like, and we're so busy, so I find it fascinating, I don't think I ever heard, perhaps the word, the psychology of eating. That to me, that sounds interesting. So
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. It's actually, it's appealing to me, at least. It's appealing.
Yeah.
If I see
Well, and
the
I think a
psychology
lot of people think of nutrition as like the molecules. Like they come to see a dietitian and they think we're going to say something like how many milligrams of calcium you need to eat. And maybe that's even what I thought when I started as a dietitian. Like I need to memorize these things because this is what I'm going to be telling people. But what I realized when I got started is, oh my gosh, so many people don't even know it's okay to enjoy your food, right? In their mind, they think if I liked it, it must be bad for me. Only thing that tastes
which
terrible
actually is
good for me.
important, right? Because some people don't even know that digestion actually begins in the mouth, right?
Yep.
Some people just think
That's
to think, oh, I eat and then the digestion will start in my stomach. No, in fact, the moment you start looking at food, you're starting all kind of changes inside your body.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
It's
So
important.
so that's what I started to realize is people have a lot of really incorrect misconceptions about food. And one of the biggest ones, and I think eating problems were around a long time before social media. But one of the things that social media is really bad about, because it gives everyone a voice, which there's a lot of positive to that. One of the things people choose to do with their voice is say, because this worked for me, this will work for you. And that is one of the big thinking errors that people make about nutrition, is that somehow the same thing that's right for someone is the same thing that's right for everyone. And honestly, we could make this a very big picture sort of metaphor, the way that I think a lot of people in our culture right now, in our society, think the experience I had is the experience everyone had. Like I made it through college with no student loans, so everyone should be able to make it through college with no student loans, or that kind of thing. And I felt like, are you kidding me?
I find what you're saying very true in life. It's not just true, it's true in life. And that's one of the messages that I try, again, the myth, all this myth and things. But to be honest with you, I always say no one size fits all. This is so true in so many areas.
Right? But in nutrition, you hear this message all the time that like, this is the best diet. This is the best diet. And it should be against the law to say this is the best diet without saying this is the best diet for me. Because that's great. I'm so happy you found a way that works for you. I'm not here to argue with you about it at all. But please don't make it sound like this is what everybody should be doing. You haven't met everybody yet. How can you possibly know? If everybody can have a different personality, everybody can have a different way of eating. And the idea that there's this right way is it just goes against every part of my being, because I've actually spent 25 years talking to people, and there are literally no two people who need the exact same things like eat.
Yeah, I've been saying it all along in this podcast since the beginning. Hey, every single one of us, no matter how many billion of us are in this planet Earth, we all have a set of fingerprints. It's amazing, right? So we are so unique, and that's what I keep advocate for, uniqueness. And to me, it's a very important message, because it helps us to recognize each other as individuals in a positive way, in a difference,
Something I read once that really made an impact on me was that even siblings have a different experience of family, right? And maybe everyone else already knew that, and it makes
even twins.
Even try. That's right. Exactly. I once had I've had multiple identical twin patients, but I had a patient who was an identical twin, and she would tell me she just wants everyone to recognize her for herself. And one day she came in and she was wearing a hoodie or a fleece with her sister's name on it. And she was like, and nobody even knows who I am. And I thought, this is so fascinating that people to recognize her for herself so bad. And she's not even giving people a chance. She's walking around with her sister's name. Of course, no one's going to realize it's her. And I thought, this is exactly what she wants. She wants to be such an individual that even wearing someone else's name, she was still recognized for herself. And it's really hard when you feel like you're not living up to the expectations of someone else. And we should not be expected to. We should not be expected to live up to anyone else's expectations except our own. But with food, it's like, well, this is the best way to eat. And so if you're not doing it, then something's wrong with you. And I think part of it is people like to be part of a club, right? They like to feel like they fit in. I think another part of it is people like to have a project, like a new project, something exciting. And I also think that people like to think that they want rules. Maybe they don't really deep down, but we like to think that. So I'm thinking of the example where I once went to this kind of ladies who lunch kind of fashion show that someone invited me to. And it was at a department store, and the person that was in charge charge was like, we saw these outfits and they would describe them and then talk about them. And then after it was over, they said, does anyone have any questions? And one of the things that you had seen several times was capri pants. And so someone said, well, you said capri pants are coming back. How long should your capri pants be? And this in charge person, this fashionista said, whatever length feels the most comfortable to you. And this person kept like peppering them because like nobody wants to hear that. Everyone wanted to know like your capri pants should be above your ankle, or if you're under 5'2", your capri pants should be below the knee. And if you're over 5'2", it's like we want these guidelines because it helps us feel like we're safe. It helps us feel like we're doing the right thing. That's why people want to know how many calories should I eat or what BMI should I have. All of that is really a complete estimate. And no one wants to ever hear that these things aren't real because it makes us feel better. Even if we violate the rule, we still like to know what the rules are. And so I think for all these reasons, we really gravitate toward a specific diet. And the more charismatic the person selling that diet to us is, the more it feels like we're in a special club. And the harder it is to follow that diet, the more it feels like we have to really sacrifice to be able to do it right. And these are things that give us feelings of self-worth, but they're really false. I mean, the way you eat should not be the thing that makes you feel like you're better than everybody else. Like, why are you feeling so bad about yourself? But that's the question is, why are we always looking for something to make us feel better? Food is not the way to.
Absolutely. I don't know if I should call this people that take advantage of knowing this, what you just mentioned. If I should call them smart to like, they built a whole industry around this and just take so much money out of people, selling this, buy this checklist. I'm about to tell you the 5 foods that you should eat for this and that. I honestly,
I don't know if they're smart, but they're definitely very savvy. They're good business people. And I think they're predators in a way because they prey on desperate people. And one of the things I see a lot that makes no sense to me is people who have gotten these lists of like red, yellow, and green foods, and they're not supposed to eat any of these foods. They'll come to someone like me and say, well, what am I supposed to eat? And my answer is, you need to go back to the person who gave this to you and ask them, because there is nothing left to eat. After you eliminate everything on this list, all that's left is rice and ice. And if I cannot make an appropriate meal for you out of that. So you need to go back to them and say, what do you mean when you say avoid? Does that mean not be in the same room with it? Does that mean eat it once in a while? Like, I need more information. And so for someone to pay a lot of money to get their hair tested or their whatever tested and then get this ridiculous list and no one's actually told them what to eat. It's only about what you shouldn't be eating. I think it's very predatory.
After all we hear, after all this information that's out there, you're right. What is there? Air. What do we eat?
Oh, and supplement. I forgot.
Mercury.
A supplement. Yes. And by the way, the same person who tells you that you can't eat anything also is happy to sell you all the supplements.
I've tried to be learning how to be so neutral in a way because somehow, it's like, it blows my mind, okay, fine. They probably make a case for this and that, but it's just like, I don't know how it could all fit into a big picture where there's one person who holds the truth about this. It's relative, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And you know what to me is the worst sign is when they say, this changed my life. And I think, do you mean eating or do you mean in your wallet? Because if it changed your life, that is so great. But how can you possibly think that every other person is exactly like you? That is just a ridiculous foundation for any kind of healthcare.
Yeah. All I will say is like, if somebody, it's so interesting. I'm thankful for you bringing this up because here we have a podcast and have guests and somebody, I guess might come here. Hey, look what happened to me. I had this experience and it changed my life. And I'm like, well, okay, what can you say? Try and see if it may change your life too, But I'm like,
Great.
Okay, exactly. And so,
but I think it goes back to the same thing of people kind of not listening to their own internal cues. Like if something feels wrong to you, you have to evaluate, does it feel wrong because it's new? Because I've been following this same pattern my whole life and it's not really wrong. It's just that it's new and uncomfortable because it's doing things a different way. Or is something telling me this is not the right choice for me? There's two different feelings of discomfort. And we have to really think it through sometimes to determine, like, let's say coming on this podcast, let's say I was nervous about it. I don't think I was, but let's just say I have to evaluate that. Am I nervous because this person has made me feel uncomfortable, has violated my boundaries or something like that? Or am I uncomfortable because it's a little bit of a stressful situation? And I'm thinking of someone else with a different podcast, and you may know this person, but I got so many reminders from this person. It was outrageous. Like, not the normal amount of reminders. Like, reminders like, in 7 days will be your podcast. In 6 days will be your podcast. In 5 days. In 5 hours. And it was like so many. And every time it was this video, and it said, do not no-show, because if you no-show, I will throw a pie in your face. And it was a video of someone getting a pie thrown in their face. Okay, this makes no sense. I know this story sounds totally made up. But when I tell you that at the time of the podcast, I am sitting at my computer and I am ready. And I mean, there were a lot of, to me, like, weirdnesses about that. And like, kind of like, I'd not really, I think this is very weird. But when this person then emails me at the time of the podcast and says, I'm been on a meeting since 7 o'clock and I'm not going to be able to make our podcast. This is at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, okay, if you've been on a meeting since 7 o'clock, you knew for an hour that you're not, like, what? And I was said, that's fine. And they said, okay, get on my calendar to reschedule. And I said, no need to reschedule, because I'm thinking, are you kidding? Like, that was an uncomfortable feeling that was not about, this is just a challenge that I'm rising to. This was about, you are not holding to the same agreement that you're asking me to do. And I just think that is something you sometimes have to think through. Like, what is this feeling I'm having and why? Is it because it's a challenge that I need to rise to? Or is it because this is really not a good fit for me? And it's the same thing when someone says, do you want to try this new food, right? If part of you says, I don't know if I do want to try it, you might hear that and say, you know what? This food is safe. Other people eat this food. I'm going to try it because I want to challenge myself. And other days you might say, you know what? Today has been a really stressful day. I need comfort food today. I do not need to add one more new thing that might give me diarrhea. You know, it's like you get to decide on different days for yourself how much change or newness or challenges that you bring for yourself. And to me, it's like, how can you possibly think that everyone is on the same page every day? It's just impossible. It's so unfortunate. And I hear
the word freedom when you talk.
Oh, say more.
Yes, I hear freedom. I mean, we should be able to not feel, like you say, guilty for the choices we make, especially when it comes to food. You know, we should be able to. I like that idea too, because sometimes people come to me, but we're just trying to help. We're just trying to tell you we make this mistake. Okay, and you know what? I honestly tell this person, say, listen, good for you. I'm sorry. Yeah, you make that mistake. I'm willing to make that mistake because I want to learn on my own. I don't, I know it sounds silly.
Yeah.
And they look at me like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, I want to be able to make that choice, whether I go this way or that way. I believe it's called free will. So I want to make that choice.
I believe you earned the right to give me guidance by being in a relationship with me, by praising me. You don't get to just meet me and tell me that the way I'm eating is wrong, right? Because unasked for advice is not nice in any area, right? I mean, if there's toilet paper on my shoe, fine. Yes, be a stranger and come up to me and tell me there's toilet paper on my shoe.
And unfortunately, it happens more often than we want to. People just want to.
Right?
Exactly.
I remember being in the grocery store, and I don't know if your grocery store does this, but mine, after you fill 5 prescriptions, you get 20% off your grocery bill, your whole. So believe me, when I get 20% off, my cart is full. And I remember pushing my cart through the store, and this man comes up, stranger, and looks at my cart and says, wow, that's a lot of carbs. What's that? What's you? And I'm thinking, if this is not my patients with an eating disorder, they've abandoned their cart and they have left the store and they are not eating for the rest of the day. They are so shamed by that. I'm grateful that I don't feel any shame about that. And I said, oh, well, you know what? Don't be jealous. There's plenty still left in the store. Like, to me, it's like, okay, fine. You want to comment on to me, I'm thinking in my head, you must be on some kind of low carb diet and you are hungry is what you're telling me. But
it becomes so judgmental.
Right. So judgmental. Where is
like,
the
for
right
example,
for you to comment.
you see somebody pushing a car. I think I've seen that in social media. And you see a car that has, let's say it has a lot of Gatorade on top of each other. And they said, what does this car say to you? Immediately people think, oh, this people. What if this person is buying in bulk for, I don't know, a sports event maybe or whatever, And then people are immediately like, this is why they're fat or whatever, I'm like, don't go there. Let people be.
And I do think that the immediate thought some people maybe are even having while they listen to this is, okay, so you're just saying everyone should just eat like cookies and cake all the time. And it's interesting, if someone's thinking that, I would say to them, I wonder where you got that idea, because we never said that one single time. So what is it that we said about freedom that makes you immediately jump to cookies and cake all the time? Is that the kind of freedom that you want? Because for most people, that's not for people who are free with food, they know they can have cookies when they want them. They know they can have cake when they want them. So they don't eat them all the time because you don't want them all the time. So it's very interesting how people can take that idea of freedom and make it sound so scary. If I let myself be free with food, I would just eat whatever. And I think, really? Like you would eat pennies and you would eat paper clips? Like, I don't think you would eat everything all the time. Like, I think you would think about what you want.
Very much about what I call a neuroprotective diet.
Tell me more.
Right. I talk very much about what I call a neuroprotective diet because I work with dementia patients, people who have memory issues, and often people ask me, hey, a few things, tips. So I talk about, okay, berries are a source of this. And so I mentioned that. But at the same time, I don't vilify. I don't say don't eat this. So again, I always tell my patients, hey, these are the options. And now it's up to you,
Yeah.
You're asking me, here's the option, but it's not like a imposition.
You're right.
Must,
and
or make
we don't dictate our role in nutrition. I'll be the first person to tell you some foods are more nutritious than others. Absolutely. And that's the way I eat in my own home, is I love to have fresh foods, and everything probably that I'm guessing is on your neuroprotective diet, because I choose to have those nutritious foods in my home. But at the same time, there are other foods too. And I feel like what people don't realize in our very unbalanced society is that you can have a balance. It's not all one or all the other. So that's where I feel like people misinterpret freedom as eating all those lesser nutritious foods all the time, right? And it's not. Freedom means that you don't blame yourself for being human. And sometimes maybe you didn't get to the store, and so you're eating breakfast cereal for dinner because there isn't anything else to eat. And you don't have to feel embarrassed about that. You just think, I think I need to plan differently, or I'll go to the store tomorrow. But you don't have to feel like a terrible person because you're not eating in whatever you've decided is the perfect way. But I feel like sometimes people mix that up and they think, oh, well, Jessica's saying don't eat a neuroprotective diet. You should just eat whatever you want. That's not what I said at all. I'm saying that you should think about what you eat. Make sure you have accessibility and availability of the things that you really love that are nourishing, so that you have room for the things that maybe aren't as nourishing, but you really enjoy. And it's interesting how people love to make things black or white. They love, love, love it. And again, I think it's because it helps us feel safe. We judge people because it helps us feel like we're not being judged. But the irony is, the more we're judging people, I really think it's ways that we're judging ourselves. And the more, you probably experience this too, people who are really content with themselves have no need to judge other people.
Absolutely. Yes. When you're content, when you're busy, when you feel, when you're somebody who has something going, that's what I experience. When you have something going on for yourself in your life, then you really don't have the time to be doing this thing. It's those people that are already feeling some kind of way inside. They actually projecting how they feel. So I try to remind myself sometimes, if I ever come in contact with people, like that's how they feel. It doesn't have, we have to also have that kind of a healthy thinking for ourselves and not let, because there's a lot of toxicity out there, people that talk and say things that they, and we have to be so mature and strong to not let that get us.
Can I give an example from my life that has nothing to do with food? Okay. So I broke my ankle in April, and I've been in physical therapy the past few weeks. And the first day I went to physical therapy, I've never been to physical therapy before in my life. I don't know what they're going to make me do. It's sort of uncomfortable, not in the sense of I've been violated of my boundaries, but uncomfortable in the sense of this is a new challenge and I've never been here before. And so this girl comes in and she's chattering away. She's a patient and she's like talking to everybody and she's kind of loud and animated. And my immediate thought is, wow, that girl really has bad boundaries. She doesn't realize that this is like a medical appointment and she needs to be quieter. I heard that in my head. And immediately my wise mind said, this is about you. Part of it is you're uncomfortable. And so you are jealous that she feels so comfortable that she could just walk in and say hi to everybody. She knows everybody's name. She's not feeling uncomfortable at all. And also it tied in a little bit with my childhood. I remember being very chatty. And a lot of times I heard, Jessica, it's not your time. Jessica, don't interrupt. Jessica, you're too big. You're too mouthy. You're too whatever. And I realized this is all what's going on in me and coming out in my mind as this, there's something wrong with this girl. And there is nothing wrong with her. And so I consciously made the choice to say to my physical therapist, I love how enthusiastic that girl is. You can tell that everything she does 100%. And I like forced myself to be the opposite of the judgy person that was coming up inside because I don't want to be that person. I know that's not about this girl at all. It's all about me. And I want to be the content person who feels very content to let her be her true self. And it felt really good to say the opposite of what I was thinking and really like lean into it. Like, she's doing great. I have no reason to criticize her.
You know what I love about your story is there's nothing healthier than when we are able to have those inner conversations and we have insight. I think when we encounter somebody who lacks that kind of insight, but they're able to have that conversation and say, okay, this is my negative thinking here, and this is my positive thinking, and this is what I choose to do. What you're referring, it's great insight. That is healthy boundaries for yourself, your mind. When people are not able to have that kind of conversations with their own self and they just kind of act or say whatever comes to mind, that can be problematic for the own person and for the person. But yeah, I hear you very, very much.
The first time I ever saw or read the saying, don't believe everything you think, that was mind blowing. Like, what? Like, my thoughts aren't real. They're just a way of thinking, but that doesn't make them
perspective.
true.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. A perspective of, it's amazing how if you have something unfolding, like something here, and then you have two people, and then somebody like a third person comes and asks to describe the same incident, you'd be surprised. It goes through their own lenses.
Oh, yeah. I used to do that experiment in eating disorder treatment where I would bring like a page from a magazine and say, everyone write down what's happening in this picture. And let's say it was a picture of a man sitting at a table and a woman walking away. Like, someone would say, oh, that's a waitress and she just took his order. And someone else would say, they just broke up and she's leaving in a huff. And it's like the exact same picture. And so many people, everyone can make up their own story about it. And I think that's what we do in our lives. The same thing is true about our bodies. We can look at our own body and see it so differently from the way other people see our bodies. And it all has to do with how we're thinking and what we believe. That's a whole other topic, is our body image and how we make up stuff about that without insight.
And I was just about to ask you that for someone who's listening right now and perhaps they recognize an unhealthy pattern of in their own, whether it's eating, their own body image, what are some first steps that they can take to, like, let's say, begin that healing?
Sure. So I think the number one thing is I would encourage you to just start writing down or even taking notes in your phone of the thoughts when you have them. Even if you're not ready to talk to someone else about them, take away the shame of thinking like I'm such a screw up by just writing it down. Because when you look at something on paper, it gives you an objectivity that you can't have when it's in your head. It takes a long time to develop the ability to look at your thoughts in your head. And there's this saying, and I thought Einstein said it, but I could be wrong, that you can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it. So just start writing things down or type an email to yourself that you're never going to let anyone else see, but just start writing or thinking or somehow getting down on paper the thoughts you're having. If it's too hard to write your thoughts, just write down words. Just maybe write a sketch or something, like some way that you can start kind of expressing your feelings and realize that you can look at them as an outside person and they're never as
like
bad.
Journaling, right?
Yeah, that would be great. But journaling sometimes feels kind of like pressure. So maybe like instead of journaling, maybe you think about like index cards or sticky notes or something where it's less pressure. Like, I feel like sometimes journaling feels like this is my memoirs and my grandchildren are going to read it and it has to be perfect. And I'm just talking about like downloading the thoughts that are in your head and just getting it out. And just a simple example, I have anxiety and I take medicine for anxiety. And before I did that, to sort of the recognition recognition that I had anxiety, how I realized it is whenever my boyfriend, who's now my husband of 20 years, whenever he would leave, I would feel really stressed out. Like, what if that was the end? What if it's over and I don't know it? And what if I said something wrong and now he doesn't like me anymore? And I would write all these things down. And what it did for me is that later I could look back on it and say, oh my gosh, that's how I was feeling. And look, I feel better now. Or look, these things weren't true. So when I felt, it didn't make my anxiety go away. But next time I felt that anxiety, I could say, this is not real because I've felt this before and it didn't turn out as bad as I thought it was going to be. And it's the same thing with your eating or your body. If you can recognize that sometimes you're in a headspace where you feel like a failure, where you feel like you've screwed everything up, where you feel like your body is not acceptable, and then later you feel differently and it's like your head has cleared, then you recognize these are just thoughts. And they're thoughts that happen, yes, when you're stressed out, when you've had a bad day, when someone has said something that you interpret as insulting. There's lots of reasons why you have those thoughts, and your thoughts and feelings are never shameful for you to have. They just don't always reflect reality.
Right. If we just learn to know that thoughts are just that, just thoughts.
Yes.
You know, they don't have to, their reality and they don't equal action.
So that's the first step. The second step would be if you get the courage to share with someone else, to say, these are thoughts I've been having, or even to, if you go online and maybe even ask ChatGPT, like if someone's having these thoughts, what would you suggest for them? You know, because they might give you some strategies. Ideally, I would recommend anyone who's struggling with their eating, talk to an eating disorder dietitian, even if you don't think it's an eating disorder, just because we're the ones who are kind of trained to really look at all these factors that we're talking about.
Are you talking about intrusive thoughts? Is that what refers intrusive thoughts?
You have intrusive thoughts about your eating, or if you're just feeling regretful or guilty about your eating, I think that an eating disorder dietitian is a great place to start, because not every doctor, not every therapist really understands it. And dietitians were really trained in sifting apart what is about food, what is about feelings, so that you can handle both in a healthy way.
Right. And I don't know if you know the statistics as a nutritionist, what is the percentage of nutrition that in medical school doctors are taught. I don't remember the number, but it's very low.
Very low. And I think there's only 1 or 2 medical schools that even have a rotation, even an optional fellowship in eating disorders. So that's a big problem. Unfortunately, there are a lot of doctors who are causing eating disorders by not asking people about their eating and just giving nutrition advice, kind of like an influencer, you know? Like my husband was told, well, your cholesterol's high, so you need to eat more fruits and vegetables and eat less meat. And I was infuriated because I'm a dietitian. Believe me, my husband eats fruits and vegetables, and he even complains about how much fruits and vegetables we have in my house. And I told him, if you didn't want to eat fruit, you shouldn't have married a dietitian, right? But how dare the doctor, without even asking him about his eating, tell him he should eat differently? If you didn't assess his eating, how can you make a recommendation? And so I feel like they're, you know, and I'm grateful my husband is not in danger of.
And what kind of fruits or vegetables? Because not every fruit, just because it's a fruit, not every fruit out there is like, I always tell my patients, I said, just because it says natural, that doesn't mean it's good for you. You know, arsenic is natural, carbon is natural.
Right. We always it's natural, yes. And I'm thinking about another person who came to one of my talks who said, my daughter's doctor said she was getting chubby, she shouldn't eat anything white, and now my daughter won't drink milk, right? So it's like these blanket statements like that without for what the patient brings to the story. That kind of advice is really not valuable, and it can actually cause big problems.
You know what I think this is just my personal opinion.
Sure.
Part of the big problem in general is, I think it's called time. We have so very little time and so much to do. There's and I'm not, you know, condoning anything. And I just say this because this is what I do. I work in, you know, medicine, and we have so little time a lot of times for our patients. So, you know, and we have a duty to be mindful of the things that we say. I try to be as careful as possible to say, hey, again, like you mentioned, don't make those general comments, or, you know, without again assessing, you know, looking at other things. You know, I work in a very specific, one of the things I do, this is just my thing. I work in a specialty, right? But I always look at other things. I always look at labs, other things, because I want to know that what I'm going to be talking about here that relates to this specialty is not something that might affect something else. For example, just to give an example, in neurology, and I don't know if you know this, we recommend supplements, some supplements for headache, like magnesium, for example. But not everybody, it's a supplement. But if you're already having some kidney issues, and again, that's not neurology, but if the patient's having some kidney issues, they don't know that. If you give them a bunch of magnesium and now you're having them to be, prone to, what if they are prone to kidney stones, stuff like that. So we always have to be like, okay, yeah, this is a recommendation I make. However, be mindful of this and this and this, or, like you say, try to look at other things and not. So I hear what you're saying.
But you're talking about looking at the whole person and not just one part. And that's
absolutely.
I don't know that's, I think
maybe that's the nurse in me, because we are taught in a different school of thought. We tend to be more holistic. And I think that's the reason why a lot of patients like to go see nurse practitioners, because I don't know, it's so ingrained in me. So
yes,
take a little extra.
Yes.
You do some more good than anything else.
I think so. Absolutely. Yes.
Wow. And so if someone, one last question, I know we're kind of, that's the thing, I always say, we'll probably take 30 minutes, but I love talking, as you can say, and asking my guests all kinds of questions. So one thing I want you to tell us is how can people connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a website called Healing Your Inner Eater, which will tell where my next workshops will be. And if someone related to some of the things I said, there is a Healing Your Inner Eater workbook that you can purchase, and I'll put a discount code podcast, and it'll bring the price of that workbook down to $15. And then I also have an umbrella kind of website, jessicasetnick.com, which is where you can invite me to come speak at your event or contact me. I would be happy if someone's looking for eating disorder dietitians. Can be hard to find someone in your area. I'd be happy to try to help you or even answer questions. You're welcome to email me, jessica@jessicasetnick.com, and I will point you in the right direction.
That is awesome. And one last thing, if there's one truth or anything that people can walk away from this conversation, what would you say?
I would say that what you eat doesn't make you a good or bad person.
That is beautiful. Simple. That is beautiful, because let me tell you, I try to be as, I don't know if the word is uplifting or encouraging. Something comes to mind today. I have my little lunch that I love to bring to work every day, and I'm eating what I think is my little healthy food, right? And it's, I don't know, maybe berries, and I love berries, by the way, so I'm eating my food. And then there's a microwave right across, and then somebody comes in and they have this, it seems like it's a feast, and it smells like fried chicken, all these beautiful things. And I say, hey, it smells good. Have a good lunch. That's your food, right? Somebody comes back, are you going to eat all that? And then they look at my plate and I'm like, no, we're not going to make comparisons. Hey, she's happy, whatever. Who knows? We're women. All I was thinking is, she might be on her period and she feels like she wants to eat, I don't know, however many chicken strips. It's her thing. I love to give people advice if they ask me for it. So
I think of it like a vaginal exam. It's only okay if someone asks for it.
And even that, I don't know. Sometimes even we don't want it. Oh, wow. It's been a pleasure to have you here in the podcast, Jessica.
Thank you.
What a awesome conversation. I encourage everyone to connect with you too. I think you're on Facebook.
I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn. And if you do go to jessicasetnick.com and you hover there for a second, it will bring a pop-up to sign up for my email newsletter, and then you'll always know where I'm going to be and what's on my mind.
Well, thank you, everybody. Stay unscripted. Thank you, Jessica.
My pleasure.
Hi, everyone. As a neurology nurse practitioner, I've seen how overwhelming health information can be. Between medical jargon, online noise, and conflicting advice, people often feel lost. That's why I created Rosabel Believers, to make brain and health education simple, approachable, and empowering. Inside this membership area, you'll find practical tools like the Resource Center, where you can download free guides, forms, and worksheets that help you track your health and better understand your body. You'll also find exclusive content where I share insights about brain function, stress, migraines, memory, and many other topics, all explained in everyday language. And one of the most meaningful parts of Rosabel Believers is our Facebook community. This space was built so that subscribers can connect, communicate, and learn from each other. Here's where you can ask questions, share your progress, support each other, and be part of real conversations about brain health, self-care, and personal growth. Because while learning is important, community is what keeps us motivated and reminds us that we're not alone.